Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sustainable Financing Deep Dive session on deposits and levies. My name is Hilary Boyes. I'm the Technical Officer for Resource Recovery for Pac Waste Plus, based here at SPREP in Samoa. I'm joined by my colleague, Mayu Namura from Deposit 2, and we're honoured to facilitate this session today. This deep dive was a very easy topic to choose. As we've learned from the previous 3 days of the CPRT, we in the Pacific are facing a common problem. An increasing amount of consumer products are imported to our islands, and currently there seems to be few economically viable solutions for their management. So we're often left with little choice but for items to be disposed of in our landfills and dumps and littering our beautiful islands and oceans. But as we've also learned from the previous 3 days of the CPRT, sustainable financing, deposit and levy schemes are increasingly seen as a way to provide an economically viable solution for their end-of-life management. So why are these schemes seen as a solution? Because they are working, and they're working for our neighbours. They've been working in Kiribati since 2004. They've been working in some states of FSM since 2005. They've been working in Palau since 2011, and RMI since 2016, and Tuvalu since 2019. We know other countries are now looking at these systems for themselves. 10 countries alone are currently progressing a scheme with Deposit and Pac Waste Plus. This is a hot topic right now. So for this deep dive, we did not want to spend time restating what a sustainable financing system is and how it can benefit waste management. We figured most of you already know this. Instead, we wanted to provide this platform whereby countries in the Pacific who are considering a scheme can learn directly from those countries in the Pacific who have a scheme already in place. We're honoured to have join us online today, Calvin Iski from Palau, Jacqueline Luckmas from RMI, Sumai Benoit from Kiribati, Walter Kawa from Tuvalu, and Christina Filmid from Yap. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining. They are here to share with us their details of their sustainable financing schemes and their experiences in establishing and operating them. This deep dive is in 2 parts. In the first half, after we show a quick video, we'll hear a presentation from each of those countries describing their systems. Deposit and Pac Waste Plus will then provide a quick summary of the assistance we are providing to the region in this space. Then, following a short break, we'll have the second half of the session as an interactive question and answer time. So those of you who are considering a scheme can ask direct questions of those from this panel who have a system in operation. Christina and Yap said to me on the phone last week, when they were implementing their scheme, she thinks they learned every lesson in the book. So it's wonderful she and the others here have made themselves available to come and share their lessons. And so you can try to avoid those same mistakes. If one of you considering a scheme today can avoid learning one of those lessons the hard way, I'll consider the session a success. So please, as we go through the first half of the session, please do submit any questions you have in that chat function, and we'll try our hardest to get through them in the second half, Q&A time. And one final thing before we get started, you may be confused with different terminologies used for this topic. We have named the session Sustainable Financing, Deposit and Levies, trying to be encompassing of the systems currently in place in the Pacific. But there are many different names that get used interchangeably, and I really apologise for that. In the Pacific, you're probably most familiar with container deposit systems, or CDL. Yesterday at the CPRT, we heard these schemes being called the Product Stewardship Scheme. On Wednesday, they were discussed as extended producer responsibility or importer responsibility. At Pac Waste Plus, we use the terminology advanced recovery fee and deposit. They're also known around the world as bottle bills or advanced disposal fees. Please bear with us on this, and remember one thing, all these schemes have a common theme. They're a way of providing a sustainable, self-financing system for the management of recyclable materials. They do this through the collection of a deposit and fee, which is paid by consumers and importers in advance before an item becomes a waste material. So without further ado, we'll play a short video quickly illustrating how the systems work, and then we'll get into the session. Thank you.
This is an illustration of how an advanced recovery scheme works. Currently, waste management in the Pacific follows a linear pattern. Items are imported or manufactured. A shop sells them. We purchase and consume them. We have little choice but to dispose them in a landfill or a dump. Some items are also littered or burnt, and a small amount of recycling occurs, generally with scrap metal. For a model like this, we're all paying for waste management. Landfills cost the government money to construct and manage, and we are potentially paying with our health and the health of our environment. With our rapidly overflowing landfills and knowledge of environmental effects and climate change, there is a movement from a linear to a circular way of managing waste. In the circular pattern, items are imported or manufactured. A shop sells them. We purchase and consume them. Then a system is set up for us to return the item. Eventually, the container makes its return to a factory for recycling. And what is the purpose of a sustainable financing or advanced recovery scheme? It is for exactly the same thing: to create enabling environments to provide circular flow and management of waste. It provides incentives for consumers to recycle and a self-financing mechanism to enable recycling activities. So how does the scheme work? There are three key elements. Firstly, by placing a value or a small deposit on the items. When a shop purchases an item from an importer or manufacturer, in this example, we are using a bottle of water in a PET bottle. But this can be any type of item you wish to manage, from an aluminium can to an end-of-life computer or vehicle. When a shop purchases the item from an importer or manufacturer, they pay a small deposit. When we purchase the item, we also pay a small deposit. After we consume the item, we have a choice: to landfill or burn or litter, or to recycle. If we have a financial incentive to recycle or to be rewarded by getting our deposit back, then we will more likely choose to recycle. The recycler can return the items to the importer or manufacturer, who would pay them the deposit, and the loop is closed. But is it a different factory who will recycle the items? Is it a different shipping company going to a different country? And that shipping company will likely not take the item for free. How can the recyclers get a regular funding to enable the long-term collection and export of these items? Currently, this illustration just shows a deposit circulating around. It is not sufficient to fund recycling or export activities. We need to add another element. The second element to the scheme is a handling fee. In addition to the deposit amount, the recycler receives from the importer or manufacturer a handling fee that can cover the cost of recycling the item. The consumer receives their deposit back, and there is no change to that. The recycler can use the handling fee to fund the collection and export of the item. This is the general purpose of the schemes. The consumers have an incentive to recycle, and recyclers have a self-financing mechanism to enable recycling activities. But what if there are many importers, manufacturers, and recyclers? Who ensures the flow of funds to ensure the authorized companies receive the correct amount? Who manages to ensure the system and the scheme runs fairly and achieves the desired purposes? What happens to the unredeemed deposits? That is, the deposit paid by the retailer and consumer but not claimed back. In this illustration, they would be held by the importer. We need to add a final element. The third and final element to the scheme is a special fund that is managed by a central agency. Instead of the deposit and handling fee, being paid by the importer directly to the recycler, it gets paid into a secured central recycle fund. The fund is kept safe and allocated to the recycler once the consumer has been refunded their deposit and after the items have been collected and exported. This special fund is where unredeemed deposits will go, so they can be used for approved activities used to benefit the system or waste management. This is the general illustration of how an advanced recovery scheme works. When designing a scheme for your context, these are the elements that you need to carefully consider. SPREP through JPrism 2 and PAC Waste Plus can assist. But for now, to summarize the purpose of an advanced recovery scheme and how they enable a circular management of recyclable items, firstly, the scheme provides an incentive to your community to, instead of landfilling, burning, or throwing away a recyclable item, they have an incentive to drop off at a recycle depot and then to get an immediate financial reward. Secondly, for recyclers, instead of bottles or items stockpiling with limited ability to recycle or export, it gives them a self-sustaining financial ability to collect, process, and export those items, or a funding source to provide for recycling in country. If you see benefits in an advanced recovery scheme to assist your country's ability to collect and manage recyclable items, please contact your team at SPREP for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. So that illustration provides a quick overview of how these schemes work. And I'd like to throw a special thanks to our waste expert and DJ, Michael, in our Vanuatu office, PAC Waste Plus Vanuatu office, for the excellent voiceover. So now I'd like to hand the floor to each of our country representatives to provide an overview of their schemes. The first up is Palau with Calvin. Hi, Calvin. We'll play your slides now.
Good morning, good afternoon. This is Calvin from Palau. I'm going to talk about CDL program in Palau. Okay, so laws and regulations. So CDL in Palau started in 2006, and in 2011 we started implementing it using core state government as the initial redemption center. So in 2012 we contracted a private company to become the exporter of the recyclables. And in 2016, we welcomed a new second redemption center, which is the private company. In 2017, the law came out for Plastic Bag Use Reduction Act. That's to eliminate shopping bags, plastic shopping bags. In 2018, finally, we amended our CDL program to include all beverage containers regardless of size and contents. So this is the outline of the program. So basically it's a 10 cents deposit fee. We call it DBC, which is a deposit beverage container. So basically the importer pays 10 cents deposit fee to the National Treasury, and the National Treasury will then distribute this 10 cents into two accounts. One account is the recycling fund. This fund is to be used by the solid waste management in the national government, and the other account is for the refund, the 5 cents refund, and the 2.5 cents for the redemption center's compensation. So basically, the redemption center receives its compensation and then pay the 5 cents to the redeemer. Another responsibility for the redemption center is to prepare the DBC for pickup by the contractor, who is the exporter. Now the contractor will then have to pay the National Treasury per kilogram of these recyclables and then export them for their own profit. So there was a couple of challenges faced when we started this program. First of all, it took us 5 years to implement the program because of our lack of capacity and facilities. Some items were difficult to recycle or export. Accuracy of counting became a problem also through manual counting. And the biggest one is the old containers with no deposit fee, where we were redeemed, so the fund became short, so we had to find some source of other money to compensate those old containers. And of course, when we started the program, we had some poor information sharing between implementing agencies. And finally, in 2018, we had to amend the law to include all beverage containers because the first law calls for only 32 ounce and below, and some milk products were not redeemable according to the first law. So those are some challenges faced. So for export in Palau, we cannot actually recycle beverage containers on island, so we have to export them. So we hired a local recycling companies, which already exist in Palau, as they are the most expert in exporting business, especially for recyclables. So basically, the contractor is just responsible for buying the containers and be responsible to export them out of Palau according to their contract. Now this table shows the current situation of our CDL. You can see that the redemption rate right now running around over 80%. And I'll show you on the next slide how the graph looks like. So this is the graph. You can see the red line, that's the redemption rate. You can see that the first 3 years it went all the way up and down, up and down. But now after 2014 until 2021, you can see the stabilization of the red line. That means the redemption rate is running over 80% almost every year. This slide is just shows you the summary of the RDBC fund, number of imports, the DBC fee, recycling fund, compensation for the redemption center, and the refund to the public. So you can see that the refund up until now, maybe around 10 years, we have refunded about $7.6 million to the public, which is good for the economy. And the recycling fund, which is used by the solid waste management in the national government, we have accumulated a total of $4.3 million. So basically this recycling fund pays for everything. It pays for awareness programs, pays for the landfill operations, our collection systems, and also the personnel salary. That's used by the national government. So this slide just shows some examples of TR awareness activities paid for by the CDL program. Radio talk shows, school awareness, and brochures, some programs, TR family challenge. And also the next slide which these are also some examples of activities paid for by the CDL. You can see that this fund, CDL program fund, is really a good financial mechanism for Palau's solid waste management activities, not only for. Well, I think that's it. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Calvin. That was a really very informative summary, and I think there's lots to learn from Palau that can pay for everything. I think that's a desirable goal for others to strive for. So thank you, and a reminder to everyone, we won't have Q&A each time. We'll save up questions till the second half of the session. So please remember them, write them into the chat, and we'll record them and then answer them in the second half. Thank you so much. So we'll move on now to the scheme from RMI. We've got Jacqueline Luckness from MOC, the Majuro Waste Atoll Company.
Yagoi, my name is Jacqueline Luckness, and I'm the Operation Manager for the Majuro Atoll Waste Company here in RMI. I'm very privileged to be part of the Clean Pacific Roundtable 2021 on sustainable financing, sharing RMI activities on deposit and refund recycling scheme for beverage containers. The content of the presentation will focus on container deposit legislation legal framework, items that are included in the scheme, how is the deposit collected, refunded, and the fund management, who operates the scheme, key benefits of the scheme, key learnings, opportunities for improvement found by it. In 2016, the national government endorsed a legislation on styrofoam cups, plates, plastic products provision, and container deposit act to ban importation, manufacturing, sales, distribution of styrofoam cups and plates, disposable plastic cups, plastic and plastic shopping bags, and to implement the container deposit provision. By 2018, the provision was amended to implement the container deposit recycling system, and this is regulated by the RMI Environmental Protection Authority. The items that are included in the schemes are aluminum cans, plastic PET bottle, and glass bottles. These are only 3 types that also come in certain sizes of 32 fluid ounce, 950 milliliter or lower. The cycle of the recycling fund of the container deposit system and how it works. Importers pay a deposit of 6 cents, and this 6 cents is collected by the Ministry of Finance for the recycling fund, and Majuro Atoll Waste Company or recyclers claim the 6 cents, retain the 1 cent, and pay customers 5 cents on these recycling items. Who operates the scheme? Under public law, EPA is the regulator to ensure proper administration and enforcement of the provision of this act. Majuro Atoll Waste Company is contracted by EPA as the system operator on Majuro. We also service Outer Island, Kwajalein, Ipai, Chaluj, Wache, and so. Recently, Kwajalein, Ipai acquired a brushing machine. The key benefits of the scheme. Over the past 3 or 4 years, 2.1 million families have been benefited through refunds, and MOC have received from the handling fee of $400 over the past 3 years from the 1 cent, which helps fund recycling. There are also the recycling system is established. Majuro and Outer Island community benefits, public ownership. It's a sustainable financing program. Materials of these are no longer eyesore and nuisance in public places. It also creates job opportunities as we expand our operation And until today, there has been successful implementation. Key learnings, opportunities for improvement found by RMI. The national government supported the startup through seed funding of 100,000 to buy up existing little legacy waste, and these have been recovered, we could say 100%. We still face challenges in exporting some of these materials, especially the PET plastic. Can say that we are successful in exporting of the aluminum cans. And also it has given some funding opportunities to explore and expand to include other materials such as end-of-life vehicles, tires, etc. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you. Kumodada.
Thank you very much, Jackie. That was excellent. And again, much to learn off. I'm sure our chat feature is going to get very full here. I think the legacy waste is an interesting one you touched on at the end there, and it's very good to learn what the government and RMI did for that. So let's touch on that more a bit later on. So thank you. So now we'll move on to Kiribati. Kiribati is our oldest scheme in the Pacific, and we're honoured to have Sumai Benoit present their scheme for us. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Someg, and I work as a project officer for the Waste Management and Pollution Prevention section that is under the Environment and Conservation Division. Today I'll be giving a short presentation on the Gokimengi system, which is also known as the recyclable waste system. My presentation is divided into four main sections. Firstly, the overview or the background of the system. Second, in terms of its establishment, what are the waste items covered under the system, the stakeholders involved, and the role they play in. Secondly is how the system operates in terms of the operator of the system, acts and regulations covered under the system, levy deposited for the imported items. Thirdly is the issues encountered that affects the operation of the Gokimengi system, and lastly the priority actions supporting the Gokimengi system. So let us look at the background of the system. The Gokimengi system, or the recyclable waste system, started in the year 2004 as a pilot project in collaboration with the UNDP, Ministry of Commerce, and was implemented by the Foundation of the South Pacific. The project was tendered out for the public interest in the year 2004, and in the year 2005 it was operated by the local private sector known as the One-Stop Company. In this system, only three items included. They are acid-lead batteries, aluminum cans, and PET bottles. Sorry. It is for PET bottles. It is important to know that not all PET bottles are covered under the scheme. For example, detergent, shampoo, and some beverages. Essentially, those that are covered are mainly those that are labeled as the class 1 and BEV. For example, water bottles, cooking oils, and some mixed cold beverages. And however, there's a plan to incorporate other potential waste items, but that will be covered further in our next slide. Since the establishment of the system, the Gokimengi operator has exported 120-foot full container of acid-lead batteries, that is 13 tons, 3 20-foot full containers of aluminum cans, that is 12 tons each, and 5 20-foot full containers of crushed PET bottles, that is 73 tons. So on a yearly basis, the Gokimengi receives approximately 4 million aluminum cans, 1 million PET bottles, and 2,000 acid-lead batteries. It is also important to know our stakeholders who are involved in the Gokimengi system, which members include representatives from government ministries, which are the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Finance, Customs Office, that is under the Ministry of Justice, Attorney General Office, Kiribati Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Urban Council or local councils, that is TUC, PTC, including KUC in Christmas Island, And lastly, the Ministry of Environment, Lands and Agricultural Development, that are the Environment and Conservation Division, and the Planning Unit.
Was it someone particularly? Sorry, everyone, we seem to be having a slight technical issue here. We'll get back to that very informative discussion in a moment.
Tech team's on it. It's that end.
Okay, the tech team's in. Sorry, everyone, bear with us for a moment.
Move on to the next topic, which is how the system operates. So the system is privatized and operated by the local agency known as the private one-stop company. Sorry. They are the ones that are responsible for the collection of these recycling waste items from the public. So these waste items are currently recognized under the Special Fund Waste Recovery Act of 2004 and the Special Fund Regulation of 2005. For the Special Fund Waste Recovery Act of 2004, it gives the power to or the authority to the Minister of Environment to impose a levy on any imported items that can be recycled. And as for the Special Fund Regulation of 2005, it sets up the special fund where the deposit is paid into, and not only that, but it is also a provision that allows the government to enter into agreement with the private sector to operate the system. For the levy deposited for the imported item, the 5 cents is paid at the import for every legislated item, that is for PET plastic bottle and the aluminum cans. So the money is collected by the Kiribati Customs Service at the first entry and then deposited into the special fund. So from that 5 cents, 1 cent goes to the operator goes to the operator for the Kogibangi's financial operation, and the remaining 4 cents goes to the customer that brings in the item. For the asset-led batteries, the $5 is given to the customer that brings in the item. On the main island, there are only 5 collection points, as you can see on the slide. Collection point 1 is Bondigi, collection point 2 is Biginipio, collection point 3 is Jaradiki, collection point 4 is Baidiki, and for collection 5 is the main facility that is located in Beso, where the processing takes place. Let us now come to the next point, which is the issues encountered. So here are some of the issues that we encountered that affects the operation of the Kogibangi system. Firstly is a lack of space for stockpiling the recycling waste items. Secondly is the PET bottles hasn't been exported off the island since the last buyer stopped accepting it, that is in the year 2018. So thus, as a result, the PET bottles are now stockpiled at the yard, accumulating space. So that is another issue. Another issue is the maintenance of the crushing machineries, such as baler machines and other crushing machineries. What we've experienced now is that the Kogibangi has stopped receiving PET bottles from the public. because since the baler machine hasn't been functioning very well early this year. So that's another issue. Another issue is the transportation in collecting of this waste item. In the past, we rely or depend on the rental trucks, which sometimes can cause the delay in the collection of these recycling waste items. And lastly is the minimal recycling and manufacturing opportunities on the island, and also due to our remoteness, the economies for the recovery and to transport these items to international markets are very costly and expensive. Despite the challenges that we encountered, here are some of the priority actions that supports the Kokemeang system. So the first one is the expansion of the scope of the Kokemeang system to cover other recyclable waste such as bulky waste, mainly end-of-life vehicles, glass bottles, and electronic waste, and to name a few. Another priority action is to improve the current material facility capacity, including machinery such as aluminum can crushing machine, baler machine, forklift machine, and etc. And the last priority action is to establish collection depot at the outer island. However, this will depend on the results of the waste audit, which will determine which islands are in need of the facility. So this brings me to the end of this presentation. I've talked about the types of waste covered under the system, how the system operates, the issues encountered, and the actions supporting the Kokemeang system. I hope you find this presentation informative and interesting, and thank you again for listening. And now, if there are any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them.
Thank you so much, Shumai. That was very informative and interesting. And two things that that I thought of here. We've still got common problems. The maintenance is a common problem that we're faced with across the Pacific, and the expensive exports are a common problem. So it'll be interesting for the group to understand that even with the scheme in place, we still need to think about its design to make sure we can help solve these problems that we are experiencing. And excellent news, you're thinking of expanding to the outer islands and other products. We're very keen to help you on this space. Thank you so much, Kiribati. So Kiribati was our oldest scheme in the Pacific, and now we're going to our newest scheme in the Pacific. Walter from Tuvalu will give you your presentation time. Thank you so much.
Aloha and welcome to Tuvalu Integrated Waste Levy System. First, we look at why waste levy in Tuvalu was set up. There are three main points I want to stress this time. First one is to address limited land space issues, vulnerability of Tuvalu to environmental problems through increasing recycling to limit the need for landfill. Also to develop a sustainable financial mechanism to support the waste management services in Tuvalu. Last, to promote circular economy as the best solutions in response to environmental problems caused by poor waste management. These are the three main points or reasons behind why waste levy system in Tuvalu was established. Second one, we look at waste management levy regulation, how the legislation came into place. The need for waste levy system developed in 2014. However, work to draft the Waste Management Act started like in 2015 until in 2017, Waste Management Act was endorsed. Consultations after the endorsement of the Waste Management Act were started to develop the levy regulation 2008. But in mid-2019, the Tuvalu Waste Management Levy regulation was endorsed. Therefore, the regulation came into effect on the 1st of August 2019. This is just before the Pacific Island Forum meeting. For levied items included in this regulation, the regulations start with 3 levied items, include PET bottles less than 1.5 liters, aluminum cans, and lead acid batteries in the 1st of August 2019. But following year, in April 2020, additional 3 items were added to the list, including disposable nappies, cars, and motorbikes. So as of now, Tuvalu have a total of 6 levied items under the waste management levy system or the regulation. And also now, proposal for 2 additional items be levied in 2002 is still under discussion through the National Waste Levy National Steering Committee. And these items include white goods and also lubricant oil imported from the country. How the levy fees are collected. The Waste Management Department is currently working closely with the Customs Office to collect the levy fees at the borders. So all incoming selected items under the levy regulation be collected at the borders. All collected waste levies goes directly to the government consolidated fund through the Treasury Department. Therefore, a monthly imported report updates on levied items will be reported by the Department of Waste Management under the support of the Customs Office, the National Waste Levy Steering Committee during its monthly meeting. Who operates the system? Department of Waste Management, Customs Office, and Treasury are the leading department who operates the system. Support from the Funafuti Town Council, Police, the Marine Department, and the Department of Environment are also acknowledged in this system. We are working closely with these sectors, and also they are part of the National Waste Levy Steering Committee. And the Ministry of Finance provide a levy update to the Department of Waste Management to report to the National Waste Levy Steering Committee meeting every month. Benefits Tuvalu get from the waste levy system: a reduce in public littering and volume of daily general waste disposals rate. Also, families were able to obtain additional source of income through waste levy refund program, currently running on the main island of Funafuti. Also, this system created new jobs under the levy system. 4 new officers were recruited in 2019. And also, governments received additional revenue through the waste levies collected at the border. Lesson learned and improvements for the future: the increased enforcement training, both for Customs Office and the Department of Waste Management towards the enforcement of the regulation, especially for the collection of the fee at the border. And also to, like lesson learned, as of now, the levies goes directly to the government's consolidated fund, but it is more appropriate to create a special fund as the initial plan to finance the whole system. And also to utilize the Moanataka Partnership Agreement, so Tuvalu will be able to ship its recyclable materials out of the country under the Moanataka Partnership Agreement. And also construction of Out Island recycling stations currently underway as we work together with the Packways Plus project from SPREP, construct every recycling station on each island out of the main island. And also the expansion of the waste levy refund program. All the Out Islands is another vision by 2020. So all the people can access to this refund program from all over our talents. Whakawhitailasi, and thank you for listening.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Walter. Again, an excellent summary of a system with a slightly different stance, with the waste levy in the name, the ability to collect the levy off nappies and the cars and the motorbikes now. I'm sure the group will be very interested to hear more about that, and moving into the white goods and oil next year. Very interesting. I also liked how many partners you've got working with you here. The departments of waste are one of very many elements here, so it's good to hear your working group is very effective. So well done. Thank you very much. So our last country presentation is from FSM. FSM had 3 states with systems and a 4th state underway as well. Christina Filmed is online, but she is in quarantine in Guam at the moment and has very unstable internet. So we have some slides here that I believe Mayu is going to present. And Christina, if you're able to jump in at any time, feel free to turn off your mic and interject if the internet is with us. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mayu.
Okay, I'm going to present the container deposit scheme in Yap State. This is the summary of the scheme. Thank you, Christina, for the opportunity, and I hope you can join the Q&A session. So the Yap had a legislated aluminum drink can deposit refund system operating from late 1995, but it stopped working after the massive cyclone in 2004. In 2007, Yap State restarted the system supported by UNDP. This required a repeal of the existing law and the passing of a new act, which then included the power to regulate. And the system then included glass and PET beverage containers and PET cooking oil bottles, as well as aluminum beverage cans, along with the regulations. There have been no updates. The fund can be used for the purposes expressed in the recycling regulations. This is a special fund. These are the agencies and stakeholders involved. Yap State Environmental Protection Agency is a regulatory agency. Deposits are collected by the Yap State Division of Revenue when importers pay their Yap State sales tax before they can clear the cargo through FSM customs. Yap State Division of Finance and Treasury operates the Enterprise Fund, which holds a recycling collection program account where the deposits are placed. The Office of Administrative Services verifies the recycling claim weekly made by the recycling agent, and the local company Island Paradise Metals in the contracted recycling agent who operate redemption collection and processing. So they pay refunds to the people bringing in the items. No local bottlers nor manufacturers in Yap. And next, please. These are the results for 2018. The recovery rate of aluminum can is very high, which is almost 100%. And in PET bottle, including PET cooking oil bottles, results in 45%. And recovery rate of glass bottles is 20%. The aluminum cans are baled and packed into shipping containers for export. And the PET bottles are shredded and packed into the large bag. PET seems to be shipped out alongside aluminum cans time to time. This is done by the contracted recycling agent. So it can be evaluated that the program has been well maintained and the fund management is clear and accountable. And the system contributes to the minimize public littering and divert containers from the general waste collection. So at last, so next slide, please. Yes. So it seems that the Yap local company well cooperated with the government so that the operation commenced very smoothly at the time of the commencement. So in a way that, for example, the local company invested in a large scrap metal plating press. And this was installed in a government-owned disused fish processing building at the wharf, and which became the current system material recovery facility and collection point. One of the challenges is the low value materials in the recycling market, which seems very common issue in the Micronesia region. Since the market collapsed, the PET and the glass cannot be sold. But some actions for the further improvements are now considered, which is the construction of a new shed at the Colonial dump site due to the limited storage space at the current facility. So that's all my presentation, and thank you for the listening.
No, thank you, Mayu, for stepping in, and I speak on behalf of Christina. It's very informative summary. And I think there mustn't be any recycle company anywhere in the world who would hope to achieve a 99% recovery of a certain material. So you're doing an excellent job there. Keen to learn more about it at the marketing, how the community is engaged so well. So that's very, very good. So thank you, everybody. That concludes the first, the summaries from our country representatives. Thank you again to those presenters. We'll just move on now quickly to JPrism and Pack Waste Plus. We'll do a quick summary and then a break, and then we'll launch into the questions. I can see there's quite a few questions coming up here, so we're very keen on the next session. Keep recording the questions, keep them coming in, and we'll absolutely get to them. But sorry, Mayu, it's back to you to present on the work JPrism's been doing. You've been developing a case study guidebook, providing the region with much valuable information. So we look forward to hearing about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Hey, I am Mayu Nomura, expert for JPrism too. And here I am going to present the technical guide for the policymakers on beverage container deposit scheme in the Pacific Island countries, which is under development based on the JPrism activities in this area. So this guide will provide officials with in-depth technical skills, knowledge, and guidance to introduce deposit scheme or reform the current system. So let me take this opportunity to appreciate the efforts made by the countries and to explain how the guide will benefit you. Please note that this guide is mainly focused on beverage containers out of some other types of materials. Next slide, please. So at the beginning, let me quickly touch on the background of our CDS guide development. Many of the Pacific Island countries have been working on the CDS developments and revisions with JPrism. Currently, activities in Pohnpei State, Chirk, Osrai, RMI, and Vanuatu are actively ongoing. As you know, CDS operation will not done just by putting the legislation in place. So required activities varies, as you can see in the slide. So through these activities over the years, we have encountered a situation where the CDS retains effective and also does not work well. It was also seen that the legislation have been there, but the implementation was on hold for many years. So we learned that the success can be realized when feasibility is studied, the system design is thought out, and the crucial components of the scheme are well put together, and support from industry and the public is there. With this background, we came to the idea that we could make the best use of the many learnings from the past experiences and compile a practical guide. So next, please. So when introducing or implementing CDS scheme in your country, the questions in your mind must be like, for example, what are the target materials? And who are the manufacturers, importers, or retailers of the target products in your country? And what facilities and infrastructures are needed for processing and recycling, and how much the capital and running costs will be? And how should the legislation be structured? What needs to be specified in that legislation, regulations, and so forth? And the thing is that the CDS guide will provide a guidance based on the country's experiences. Next slide, please. So the guide comprises 3 parts. The part 1 is knowledge building on key components of CDS system, potential operational models, and the legal arrangements. And part 2 is how to guide on designing a CDS by considering the local situation. So you can also learn how to conduct a feasibility study, which is most of the time a requirement. So even with the consultancy, we think that it is very important for policymakers to be equipped with the knowledge on feasibility studies so that you can maximize the outcome. And part 3 is the case studies of existing cases, RMI, Kiribati, Kosrae, Yap, Palau, and Tuvalu. Next slide, please. Let me give you some snapshots of each part. So in the part 1 and 2, the book will offer the guidance on how to, for example, how to prioritize the target products and items, and how to determine the refund rates and deposit rates and handling fees and so forth. For example, how to estimate generation of target materials each year, materials such as the PET bottles and aluminum cans or glass bottles. The guide will tell you to visit customs office or national statistics to look at the HS code of the national customs tariff. Some basic of HS code is also described in the guide. Basics such as the fact that the first 6 digits of the HS code is internationally common under the convention, and the beverage fall under chapter 22. And the other fact that the import data will not tell you the number of beverage containers. It will tell you the quantity, sometimes usually in liters, and the value. So as such, how to convert the liter amount into a number of container amount is a question, and the guide will also give you a hint. Next slide, please. So lastly, in the part 3, you can find a number of lessons learned from the countries where the CDS is already operated. For example, Palau case is very unique in regards to the combination of economic instruments and a tax measure. And Tuvalu case is also unique in the way that they have added target items in place at first in 2019 with beverage containers, and at the second in 2020 with the nappies to be incinerated and the bulky waste for shipping out. So the part 3 also captures profiles of each case. The last slide, please. Yes, before closing my presentation, we thank countries for having contributed to the completion of the guide. I know it's a bit hard to run through the over 100-page guide, but I'm making this guide rich in reference to the documents and reports and pictures so that you can accomplish to read. So lastly, I'm an editor and author of this guide, and I think my team is also online. So having said that, I will end my presentation for now. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you, Meu. This will be a very valuable resource for the region. And I know I speak on behalf of all the listeners here. So we're all looking forward to it. So looking forward to seeing it and using it as a resource going forward. So thank you very much. Today, we've heard details of some of the systems operating in the Pacific. And again, this group provided some excellent information, and thank you again for sharing. You now may be interested in progressing a scheme of your own, but it may be a little confusing to know where to start, how to make it work. There's no one size fits all, sadly. No matter how well the Palau system is working in Palau or the Kiribati system is working in Kiribati, it's not likely you'll be able to download that legislation and make it work for your context. I wish we could. So at Pathways Plus, building on the work that J-Prism have done, we've developed a pathway to provide a step-by-step guidance towards the implementation of a scheme that will provide some assistance to consider each of the steps required in this pathway. So the next and final presentation is a pre-recording from me introducing this pathway.
To assist in the design of an advanced recovery or sustainable financing scheme,
I'd like to introduce a pathway we recommend decision makers to follow. This pathway was endorsed by the Pacific leaders at the SPRET meeting in September this year. This 21-step pathway will assist you from identifying the need for a sustainable financing system, maybe some of you did this today, through to the implementation of your system. There are several factors and decision points to make when designing a scheme. This pathway will help you follow a structured path when considering these points. There are generally 5 different phases towards implementing a scheme. Firstly, the feasibility phase. Here, you might conduct a pre-feasibility study to consider questions such as what is the overarching outcome sought, and what are the problematic waste materials and items you seek to manage? Who will be the owner of the system, and who are the stakeholders? In this phase, it is also recommended to obtain political support to gain approval to investigate the introduction of the sustainable financing system further. It is also recommended to establish a multi-agency working group, bringing together key stakeholders to assist in the design of the sustainable financing system. The Waste Department may be the lead agency in the development of a system, but the scheme will have more chance of success if it is designed with many different perspectives. The final step in this phase is to conduct a feasibility study to gain an understanding of how the system may work. This study may consider factors such as how is waste currently managed in your country, and what are the future improvement opportunities? What infrastructure and equipment may be needed to achieve the desired management? What is the true cost of recycling each product, and therefore, what are the likely fees and deposits needed for the system's success? How much legacy waste is present? Legacy waste is items already on island in stockpiles. What are the options for its management? And how to ensure the system is designed to achieve gender and social equality. The second phase for establishing a system is a design phase, taking results from the feasibility stage and making decisions on how the system can work. In this phase, you would take a close look at your legislation to determine how the scheme and a special fund can be established. Community and stakeholder consultation in this phase is important, communicating the purpose of the advanced recovery scheme and seeking feedback to improve its design and operations. Once the system has been designed, the next phase is the legislative phase. Here you take results and develop the legislative documents needed. This might start with a policy submission. An important step in this phase is again to host meaningful consultation with your communities and stakeholders, again ensuring their feedback is factored into the final legislation. The fourth phase for establishing an advanced recovery scheme is the system creation phase. Once a system has been approved by leaders, this stage is where you would implement the physical features of the system, perhaps including building the depots or facilities, purchasing equipment that's needed to manage the recyclable materials, and undertaking training. Depending on the design of your scheme, customs and finance may have central roles in its implementation, being the agencies who identify items and collect the fees upon import and keep the funds secure. So updating their databases and systems may be needed in this step. This step is also where you may need to consider the management of legacy waste. No fee or deposit was collected on these items, so if the community were to bring them in en masse once the program is started, it may overwhelm the financial performance of the system. The final step in this phase is to design and undertake a wide-reaching community awareness program, educating on the scheme and providing information on how to participate, where depots are located, how to claim refunds, and so on. The next step is project implementation. This is where everything comes together and the system starts. Congratulations. The final phase is the operations phase. where you may conduct ongoing monitoring to ensure it is operating as designed, including the collection of social elements to identify any barriers to any members of the community. Once a system has been operating for a period, you may consider conducting a review to see if expansion or improvements can be made. Expansion opportunities may include extending the system to the outer island or remote communities. Or perhaps you can determine if additional problematic waste items can be added. Maybe you started with a focus on beverage containers, and now you'd like to consider bringing in other items, such as e-waste, vehicles, solar panels, and so on. To cater for the future expansions, we recommend ensuring your legislation in step 10 is written with future-proofing in mind. Your focus right now may be on managing beverage containers, but in a few years' time, you may seek to use this legislation as a solution to managing other priorities. This was a brief overview of the 21-step pathway. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me to discuss where you currently are at on the pathway and seek assistance for the development of your advanced recovery system. Thank you. Excellent. So that was a brief overview of our pathway, and that concludes the presentation phase of our session here. Please do keep the questions coming into the chat function, but we'll just take a quick 5-minute break and then come back and be able to ask direct questions of Calvin, Walter, Tumai, Jackie, and hopefully Tina. So thank you, everyone. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back. So as promised, this whole session now, right through till 5:10, I think, our time, Samoa time, is completely question and answers. So we'd like to have, can we display Walter and the team on the screen? If you guys can turn on your cameras, Mayo and I don't need to be spotlighted anymore. So we've got lots of really interesting questions come through the chat, and I've also been sent a few in advance as well. So we'll get through as many as we can. And they're in no particular order. And when I ask the presenters to present it, not everyone will answer all the questions, but I'll try and get as much interesting conversation going. Thank you, Walter. You're there. So Palau, have we got you? A couple of these questions are presented at you. Great. Hi. That's perfect. Okay, where should we start? So I guess that first question was, and I'd like this question to go out to RMI and Kiribati as well, but the question was regarding, have you considered expansion into other items? You've got a very good scheme with the beverage containers. Have you looked into or thought about this, using this model as a way of managing other problematic waste items?
So is that for me?
Yeah. Did you catch the question, Calvin?
Yeah, so can you hear me well?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, so we are thinking about expanding our CDA program to look at the non-beverage containers, especially the metal containers. For example, canned food, some items that are in a can. Because we have a really good going scrap metal recycling here in Palau, so we can include those in the scrap metal recycling companies. So that's what we're looking at now. But as far as other items like whitewares and e-waste, we haven't really looked at that. But that's in the plan. It's in the pipeline. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And Jackie, is RMI looking at expanding into other items?
Thank you, Hilary. And yes, I believe same with the other region, and looking at the sustainability of these programs and implementation, we are also looking at other areas that we might also include. Are you hearing me well? Hello,
Yeah,
hello.
loud and clear. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Right. And Walter, with Tuvalu, the only scheme at the moment touching into the bulky waste, how's that going for you? Do you recommend the country's considering a scheme to provide for these items?
Yes, we're still under discussion to include the bulky waste, especially the white goods, for next year. So it's not yet endorsed by the National Waste Levy Steering Committee, but it's coming up next year, probably 2022. Yeah.
Right. But you are, did I remember from your slides, you've got the vehicles and the motorbikes that you're collecting?
Oh, yes. The vehicle and the motorbikes, yeah. Currently, we collect the levy from importing those motorcycles and vehicles into the country.
Yeah. And have you commenced receiving them from the community, or is that not quite started yet?
There's not really a comment from the public, but we started with the government vehicle ordering into the country, importing into the country. So now we are collecting levy from motor vehicles and motorcycles from the public. Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you. And while we've got you, Walter, the next question in the chat feed here was regarding legacy waste. And there are different methods for that management of that waste. One of them is collecting at our end. Sorry, everyone. One of them is, speaking of e-waste, one of them is collecting the levy for several months before offering that refund to the consumers. So Walter, if you can tell us a little bit, when your scheme started in 2019, how long did you collect that levy for from your people before starting to buy back the aluminium cans and such?
Oh, we allow, since August 2019, we allow 6 months. Then we actually start the refunding of the program.
Right. And was your community happy with that? Did anybody get upset or concerned? Was it?
Oh, they're very happy with the refunding system. They already put together their cans and they collected way before the refunding program started.
Okay. Okay, that is good. And Palau, I know on the chat feed you answered this question, but how did you manage your legacy waste at the beginning? Those items that were already online on island before the scheme started.
We only, well, before the scheme started, we didn't really recycle anything. Just relied on the recycling companies. We had recyclers before we even started the scheme, so that was the only good we got from the private sector. But there was not a lot of incentive, so this year became an incentive for recyclers to step up their work. Thanks.
Very good. Jackie, and to my, your system started a very long time ago. Do you remember what happened in Kiribati at the commencement of the scheme to ensure that that legacy waste was catered for?
Okay, thank you for your question, Hilary. So in the past, the items such as aluminum cans were reused by the local communities for ice blocks and other repurposed purposes. Otherwise, they would be littered around the island and at sea. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. So Sumai, while we've got you there, the next question that came through was regarding your private sector and the contract arrangements you've got for the private sector agency who are running the scheme. The question was around what contract conditions that do you have with that company, and do you think that's an effective model?
For your question, the contract of the operator is controlled by is managed by the project planning unit.
So what is the responsibility of the contractor?
The responsibility for the contractor is to collect the recyclable waste on the island.
Very good. So Calvin, I know Palau, you mentioned that you've got one of the redemption centres that is operated by the public sector, and then one that is operated by the private sector. Can you provide a summary of the benefits and costs of each of those models?
Yeah, when we started our CDL program, initially we had the state government, the local government, to become the redemption center. So we can test the CDL program and then expand to private sector. So after a couple of years, we decided to make another redemption center to the private company, and the private company actually more efficient, more faster, because they give out the gas on the spot. The public sector tends to they have to go to the redemption center, get a ticket, then go to the finance office, the government, and then receive their checks. So it's kind of slow, but in the private sector, it's really a good, efficient program. So I recommend the private sector to be the partner. Thank you.
That's very interesting findings, and by having both, you're the one that compare the two. So Tuvalu, Walter, you're operating your scheme through the Department of Waste, right? So it's 100% public. Is that model working for you, or is it something you're happy with?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we 100% running for the government of Tuvalu is running the program, the system, the whole system. But it's something we need to look at just for the start now. The government will look after the system, but for the long run, Tuvalu is proposing for outsourcing the service of the waste levy refund program in the future.
Yeah. Okay, that is interesting. And Jackie, RMI has a different model again. I understand your system is run through a sort of state-owned enterprise, the Majuro Atoll Waste Company there. Do you have any comments for the group on that operating model, and if that's a scheme that's working very well in RMI?
I'm sorry, come again? I disconnected some part of your question.
Right.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. No, I was just comparing the model that RMI has. The MOC is a state-owned enterprise or a public-private sort of partnership. That is a model not used by other countries in the Pacific. Are you able to provide any thoughts on if that's an effective model, it's working for you, or it's something that is looked at?
Yes, it's a model that we see that for the current and time being, that is helping us as a SOE, and we might learn something from the others as they are doing the private sector and doing a business on the local side of as they're contracting privates, and we'll look into what they have and see if it's something that it can be doable or it can work in RMI. But for now, it's under MOG, as you mentioned, as SOE of the government, and it's a new program implementing the scheme of this recycling, and these would be looking forward to what we can do later on to extend might be worth looking into privatizing this, but it is also one that also help with operation funding and activities that we also aspect of the recycling program help with the.
That's excellent. Thank you for that summary of a different model. And Tina, I guess lastly, if you're still with us, so YAP, does all FSM operate using a private sector operator of the redemption centres or the drop-off depots?
Thank you, Hillary. As far as I understand it, there are only 3 states in the FSM that have a container deposit scheme. However, I believe it's YAP and Koshrai that utilizes a private entity, a local private entity. I believe Pohnpei State operates their program through the Colonia State government, which is a municipality of Pohnpei State.
Thank you very much. So Calvin, a question I got asked earlier, and you touched on it in your presentation, but it would be good to hear a little bit more because it could be some very interesting findings. Your legislation was finalised in 2006, but the system wasn't able to get operational until 2011. What was some of the main reasons for this delay, and what advice can you provide the countries considering to avoid a similar 5-year delay?
Yes, thank you. Well, basically, when the law came out in 2006, our solid waste management office actually became an office in 2005 with only 1 person as an employee, was me. So I had no capacity at that time. There was no facility to operate a redemption center. There was really no, well, basically, Chaika in 2005 until 2008. If you're going to legislate something like that, it's better to have a plan, a facility set up, have an idea who's going to run it, have an idea on who's going to be the redemption center, preferably the private sector. So those are the challenges that's why it took us 5 years to start implementation, and also some political issues also. It's not just technical issues, but also political way to pass the regulation, start the program. So those are some issues.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was excellent. I guess similar, Walter, you experienced the opposite of this with your scheme starting or your legislation approved in maybe August 2019, and then the scheme starting, you mentioned before the PIF, also I think in August 2019. This was the opposite to Palau there. Was this effective? Did you experience any pushback from your partners, such as customs and finance, or the private sector?
Yes, we did experience some pushback, especially from the customs office and the treasury. Basically, for the custom, it's more on how to, like for Tuvalu, to harmonize our proposed waste levy system, the new system, and also the existing system the custom are in at that time. For instance, the customs office do not record like a single beverage container entered the country, like the actual quantity of the beverage container. Instead, they record only the liters of beverage container entered the country. Those are the pushback we seen during the early stage of the implementation of our waste levy system. So some of the major setbacks we experienced during the implementation of our waste levy system here in Tuvalu. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Walter. And before you go too far, there was a question on the chat and you just touched on it. But what was the reason behind limiting the size of the bottles to that 1.5?
Thank you for the question. Limiting to 1.5 liters bottles of the beverage container actually based on how the littering behavior seen around the main island of Funafuti. As on the main island, there were a lot of less than 1.5 liters bottle scattered or lying around the island. So therefore, going to the 1.5 liters and above will give not only to give people a chance to continue consuming beverage containers, but not to a smaller ones, to get used to bigger ones, which are proven to be less liter than the smaller ones. That's the main reason behind how we go to 1.5 liters and above.
Thank you, Walter. That's very good. And Calvin, I think my colleague here just whispered that's a good question for you too, to limit that size of container. Have you, did you experience something similar?
Basically, we sit behind the 32 ounce and below before the first law, because those were the most visible waste on the road and on the ocean and on the parks. So I guess that was the idea to target those items and not the bigger ones. But we found out later that there's a lot of bigger containers dumped in the landfill. So make a proposal to amend the law. So
and did you face the same challenges to customs not able to record the size of the items?
basically, when we started, customs had to create a different program, separate program, just specific to our CDL program. So right now, our customs are collecting the fee using a different program. That's not the regular customs program. So they have their own specific program to deal with the CDL program.
Excellent, thank you. There's possibly more questions about the customs, but I want to touch, one of the questions just came up here about corruption. And I think that's a key question I'd like to ask you all one by one. But, you know, the world is not immune to customs officials making their own decisions at a border. How have each of you, or what controls or what problems and solutions might you have for this problem if customs aren't going to collect the fee fairly from all importers? We'll start with, Calvin, you're unmuted. We'll start with you and then go around the group if that's okay.
I'm not sure about maybe the customs should answer that question, but our challenges in corruption in our side is based on the counting of the beverage containers. We use the local government to face the problem by double counting to give the customers more money. And that was the problem on our side. For the customs side, I think we don't really have it's a problem within the law. Some beverage containers are not really clear in the law. So the customs, some customs officers tax some items based on their interpretation, and then some were not taxed. So those were issues that we have to go to the Attorney General's office and seek legal advice on which items are really under the law and which are not. That was the challenge.
Very good. Thank you, Calvin. I think some of us are having a little bit of trouble hearing you. So maybe next time if you can just speak a little closer to the mic, if that's okay. But thank you. I think we're able to record some of that. Christina, are you still there? Have you experienced any you know, the corruption issue at the border? Is that a problem you've had? And have you got any thoughts on ways that you've overcome this?
Thank you very much, Hillary. We haven't had direct experience or challenges with corruption regarding the items on import. The imported items for YAP are assessed, as Mayu shared, what is assessed by our state level Division of Tax and Revenue. And luckily for us, we have a very good working relationship with them. They know their job, you know, better than we do. They account for everything a lot better than we do. And so I guess the check and balances is that we work with them on a monthly basis to reconcile the records that they have, and then the records that we get shared, with us by our local recycling operator. One of the key points that Mr. Alice Lenny shared with us at the beginning when we were looking at ways to improve the program was how to minimize fraud at the level of recycling operator, at the level with the recycling operator. So to be on the lookout for example, the operator might be getting cans and bottles through the system and collecting the handling fee on it, but on the same cans and bottles. And so some of the things that we work with together, because even though we do regulate the recycling operator, we have to have a very good relationship, because typically, we get a little bit defensive if we come around and say you're not doing this properly. But some of the measures are that they share with us information regarding their exports on I believe, a quarterly basis. We have the records that they share with us on a weekly basis. And then we also have the finance reports that the Division of Finance and Tax shares with us on a monthly basis. So we try and keep as best an eye out on all of those different components, and try to keep an eye out for things like that should they come up.
Thank you. That's it's a very good answer. And I think perhaps the learning for the region is that reconciling regularly every month or so, and the sharing of information is the most effective way to make sure everybody's got the same records. So thank you for that excellent answer. Sumai or Jackie, do you have anything to add to the corruption? Anything interesting you've learned from your countries that maybe the region can learn from here?
Thank you, Hilary. For information, it's unfortunate for me to answer that question because I don't have much information on that. But after this discussion, I'll contact the custom team and then maybe provide information through email. Will that be okay with you?
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And Jackie, anything to add?
Thank you, Hilary. And for the question raised, as for us at MOC, we do not work directly with the custom, and now they do their work. They are under the Ministry of Finance, and we have a open communication with them. And when we start up the program, when implementing in 2018, we had a working group that consult each other on all the update on the progress of the system when it was starting up. And as under contracted by the EPA, we only make the collection, receive it from the customers, and do everything that is part of the recycling side. Under the finance, and anything for the collection is coming from the Ministry of the Finance, and custom is housed under that also ministry. I hope that gives some information on the issue of what is being asked. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting, Jackie. Thank you very much. So now I'd like to move on to a lighter topic. Corruption is one of the hardest parts, I guess, of designing these schemes, and something to get right, that transparency and the secure fund and the getting custom systems. That is the hard part. But onto the flip side of the system is our communities need to be involved. Without them, the scheme will fall over. They don't know where to redeem their deposits, and the whole thing wouldn't work. So I think, Kiribati, you've got, as I understand, the catchiest name for a scheme. Everyone's calling theirs the CDL or the bottle bill. You've got the Cocoa Manch. Do you want to just explain what that means and how your marketing works and how you're achieving such an excellent collection of the aluminium cans in South Tarawa there?
Hilary, can you repeat your question again, please?
Sure thing. Now, I'd just like to ask you, as far as I understand, you've got the catchiest name for a scheme in the Pacific, the Cocoa Manch system, and involving your communities and households is such a key component of these systems. Can you just describe what the Cocoa Manch means and how you do marketing and get your communities involved and knowing how to redeem the aluminium cans and such?
Good afternoon, Hilary. Can you repeat? I think I might need some intervention here, Irari, if you want, if you can repeat the question again. Sorry to take over from Sumay, but I'm really interested. Yes, I'm happy to assist to respond to that, but can you repeat the question again?
Sure. Hi, Tala here. Now, the question was, the Coco Manji system is the only one with a catchy name. So we're just after, what does that mean, and how do you do your marketing to make sure your communities are aware of how they deposit their cans into the redemption centres?
Okay, sorry, my internet connection is not really stable, so I'm just I will just respond to what I've heard from you. Actually, the Kokimang is how do I say it now? It's a local language, which simply means return your waste. So that's what really Kokimang means. And how do we engage the community on this? We do this through our community consultations. We have the mail out, we call it the ministry week, and it's like an environment week every year. And what we do, we organize some competitions on that's related with the Kokimang work, and we promote all the the recyclable items that are being sent through this scheme. And we received positive feedback from all the communities, especially on South Tarawa. Please note that this scheme is only applies on South Tarawa, not on the outer islands. I hope I'm responding to your question, Irari.
Thank you very much, Tala here, and return your waste. I think the region can get very catchy with some local names for these schemes. It's great. Christina, do you have anything to add in terms of your community and engagement? You're getting a 99% return. You're clearly doing something well.
Thank you very much, Hillary. Local engagement was something that was impressed upon us very much so by Mr. Ellis Lenny when he helped us out at the beginning with establishing the program. And you know, the three components of a CDL program that are highlighted a lot are the state government, the recycler, and the import, and the regulatory agency. But a fourth critical component of it is the public, because of course, like you said, without their participation, the scheme would not function and it would not work. We had a very tough time at the beginning in terms of trying to get the message across. I mentioned to you earlier, I believe we made every mistake under the sun in terms of how to engage with our local stakeholders, our students, our schools, our elderly groups and our elders. But it took a while for people to kind of grasp and trust the concept. But I think over time, you know, when you bring your cans in and the ease of it made possible by our recycling operator and finance folks, the state government finance folks, it built our trust with people, and then the program started to function, and you know, people kept coming back to be able to participate and support the program.
Thank you. That's an excellent answer, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If people, if it's easy, if it's accessible, if the operating hours are achievable, people will get involved, and of course they get their immediate rewards by getting their money back. So that's an excellent answer.
If I could just say one more thing, Hillary, I'm sorry. You know, one of the simple things that our recycling operator does is towards the end of the year, you know, everyone's strapped for cash, and so you're needing extra money to be able to buy Christmas presents or things like that. And so our recycling operator typically operates 3 days out of the week, but then towards the end of the year, he'll open the center every day of the week, so that that encourages you know, people to bring in their cans that they've been saving to get school supplies or to get Christmas gifts and fundraising things. So that's something that various people involved in the whole scheme try and do and contribute to.
That's excellent. It's a nice learning over the years. It's great. So sadly, we're coming into the last 10 minutes here. There are other questions, but I think, as someone mentioned, we would be happy to provide a summary of these and send it out as an email after this. I'd like to finish on just asking each of the panelists, if you could, there's 2 questions for you each, we'll go around the room. If you could choose one thing that your scheme has been very effective at, what would it be? And if you could choose one thing that you would change, what would it be? So if we could go around each one of you, just to provide a quick summary on what you think the most effective thing has been and what is the one thing you would change. We've got Calvin, are you still there? Are you happy to go first?
I think one of the things that's really good in our CDA is under the law, the fund is a non-lapsing fund, doesn't go away after FY fiscal year. So it continues and accumulates. So that's one of the, and also the fund is earmarked under the law, earmarked specifically for solid waste management. So that's the highlight of our system. And if I would change something, I would like to expand this program to other waste items. That's, as I said, metal containers, even waste, stuff, just expand the thing so that we can have a big revenue and solve all the problems. Not all of it, but most of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. That's excellent feedback for the group here. And it came up yesterday too, didn't it, from Australia? They've got a huge population, and I think there was $7 million or $70 million, and a lot of that goes to the local government for hospitals and schools. So they were the same, saying keep your funds secure for solid waste management. Establish that at the beginning. So that's excellent that Palau was able to do that, and you're really reaping those rewards. So well done. Who would like to go next? Sumai, are you there? What is, or Tala here? What is one thing about your scheme that you think is most effective and one thing that you would change if you could? Maybe we've lost Kiribati. We'll move on. Walter, you're Kiribati's neighbour. We'll jump to you and then back to Kiribati if we can. Is there, what one thing do you think is most effective and one thing would you change?
Thank you, Hillary. One thing, most important one, we need to change for our system in the future. The more effective is the changing from the levy fees going, instead of going to the government consolidated fund, and then we need to really set up a special fund to finance the whole system and to see how effective the system is. Instead of going to the consolidated fund, we hardly know how to really get into the system to finance the whole system. So that's one thing we need to look at. Thank you.
That's very good. And one thing that you think's the most effective, what is the one thing you think is really good in Tuvalu?
And also the expansion of our waste levy system to the outside islands. One of the effective way to cover all the recyclable waste from all the outside islands to cover under the levy system.
Yeah, agreed. And we're excited to work with you on that one. I think it is a great benefit for the system that we're able to do that for all your communities. Tina, are you online there still? What is one thing that you think's most effective and one thing that you would change about the system? And yeah.
Thank you, Hillary. I think one thing that is most effective is, as I mentioned, the collaboration amongst all of the entities that we work together in order to operate and hopefully improve the program. This collaboration and this relationship did not start off very well. Certain, how government offices work. Sometimes we're a little bit cynical or skeptical of the other. And I have to say, sometimes my own personal approach was not the best in terms of trying to keep an overall eye on the program and then approaching our division of tax and revenue and saying, what are you folks doing wrong here? And why are collection of deposits low this year and things like that. But the collaboration has built up over the years and to the point where, we easily and regularly communicate amongst one another in trying to help and contribute from our respective areas. The thing that I would like to change, and that's something that we've actually been looking at for a couple of years, we just haven't gotten to the point of actually conducting the feasibility studies on it. It's also like Palau wanting to expand the program. We are considering adding 4 additional potential categories to the program, and that's certain types of motor vehicles, making sure that our tax and revenue folks are able to account for that. certain types of motor vehicles, sorry, and then canned tin goods, aluminum tin goods, and used lead acid batteries. Because although our recycling operator does collect used lead acid batteries, it's not a part of the program. He does it on his own through direct payout of refunds to customers. So that's something we would like to look more into and hopefully be able to implement.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Christina. And similar themes coming through. That's great, and very good point about the collaboration. I think that is a really good feedback to the region, that it's not a one department show here. We need to have all departments and for the betterment of our environments. Jackie at RMI, are you able to provide any thoughts on this final question in the last few minutes here? What's the one thing you think is most effective and one thing you think you would change if you could about your scheme in RMI?
Thank you, Hilary. I am very grateful for the others on their input on this two last questionnaires they're sharing. And similar to what we are experiencing, we all see the positivity of the scheme, the recycling, the fund and the recycling fund that is collected by the Ministry of Finance is not restricted to the way that it holds up everything or payments or financial activities in all the circulation. It also helps, I'm putting more than one, helps community involvement, incentive to the community. And what we were seeing were very nuisance and litter all around the island. This has bringing a very good response and positive response from the community. And in terms of claiming and bringing this helping collection and litter less in the island. The second one is while it recovers and bring all these items, if we could have solution for everything or all the items that we are bringing into the legislation to have export solutions. While we may have for others, we may not have for the next others. And it will be very helpful to learn from what the others are doing in terms of if we are expanding, as we see it's very successful in implementing. And it's a cycle that it's going to run maybe infinitely as it cycles, and expanding and having, as I said, solution to, so that it does not just end up within our islands, but there's also some other way that it can also recycle. So that's all, and I thank you, Hilary, for those questions.
Thanks, Jackie. That was excellent. Yeah, very good findings from RMI. Kiribati, have we got you back online? Talahir or Harry or Sumai? Sadly, looks like our friends at Milad and Kiribati have dropped. But that's probably the end of our time anyway. We're already a few minutes overdue. So I will have to wrap up. I'd like to thank our speakers so much. Your experience here has been absolutely invaluable. I know that countries, quite a few of them have been commenting from Cook Islands and others who have got a scheme in the design, they're thinking this through. So I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of them to say thank you so much for your time. We've all learned so much. If we could all do a virtual round of applause to thank these guys. And yes, any final words from our speakers? I will take the honours to do the final words and say thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch with some summary of these question and answers. And Mayu and I are here. Here is our details. If you have any questions at all, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be more than happy to help you on this important topic. Thanks, everyone.